everyone, this is Alejandra La Phoenix Ayala. So as you know, we've been doing these shows Mondays and Fridays where we discuss several things going on in the boxing community. But recently, a few people have been telling me to do it in English because I have been doing them in Spanish. So we're going to try to do Mondays in English and Fridays in Spanish. We'll see how it goes, okay? And well, today's question and these days that we've been talking about, obviously something that nobody stops talking about, how the COVID-19 is affecting, well, obviously the economy, families, people, everyone, but also for us who love boxing, how it's affecting boxing. So as we know, the first time that it was canceled, an event due to the COVID-19, when back in the day it was still called coronavirus, was the heavyweights that were supposed to fight in China. That got canceled and it got postponed, moved to Canada. Now in Canada, it was still, I think 3 months, to go. So they said, by then it'll be controlled, plus from China all the way to Canada, nothing's gonna happen. And obviously it did reach Canada, it reached all the world. So then that one was postponed as well. And when it started coming into the States, February, March, and actually it came into Mexico a little bit after because, as we know, they started canceling events for March and April in the States, but they were still programming fights in Mexico, even in border towns like Tijuana. So, I think everybody was really optimistic, and then once it started really hitting hard, maybe phase 2 in the beginning of phase 3, people started saying, well, it's okay, maybe in May. I know in Mexico people were really optimistic, especially in Tijuana, saying that they were going to recover and that, mid-May we were going to have events again. There was an event that was supposed to take place mid-March, and they said, we're going to postpone it to mid-May. By then it should be, everything will be fine. Everything will be back to normal. And as we've seen, especially here in Mexico, the phase 3 is just about to start at the end of April, at the beginning of May. Also, there were other fights that were scheduled for June. For example, the Anthony Joshua versus kulev that was scheduled early June, which has already now been canceled and postponed to a later date to be determined, because especially in the US, it doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon. And even though China has recovered, we have to acknowledge that it began in November, and it's barely, many months later, coming under control. So we're not sure what's going to happen. Matchroom had announced when it started canceling events that were going to be taking place in April, they postponed them, and they announced a few fights, including a Savannah Marshall fight for the light heavyweight title championship in England for June, and Cecilia braekhus versus Jessica McCaskill in the US also for late June. And now we're not sure if those are going to happen, especially the state that the U.S. is unfortunately, under, especially New York, unfortunately, for all those people that are, dying, for all the people who are being affected, it's really causing quite a turmoil. So maybe it's too soon to say that in June we'll have boxing back. As far as the WBC, it hasn't set any dates for all the postponed fights that it was originally scheduled for April and May, including one of the fights that I really wanted to see, that I still want to see, I'm pretty sure is still going to come into effect. Mariana La Barbie Juárez versus Jacki La Princesa Nava, that was originally scheduled for May 9th. Then they said, you know what, we're going to postpone it, we're going to see where this is taking us. But the WBC has said that it is not setting any dates. It is not saying, June, July, August. Nope. It is waiting until everything is cleared, until they have the go-ahead for them to be able to start thinking about boxing dates. And of course, a couple weeks ago, Fabiana beat the WBC world champion in the minimum weight, tested positive for COVID-19. Thankfully, she did recover without any major problems. But maybe that's why also the WBC has decided not to go ahead and not to be preemptive with scheduling these dates. So, which led to the question, should professional boxers be tested for COVID-19 before they return to their, before their returning fight after this is all over? Whether it's June, July, August, September, we don't know if it'll be before the end of the year. Should they all be tested? And well, that's the question that we launched in our various platforms here in all the social media. And basically, I won't read any because they all said yes. Nobody said no. Everybody said yes, for the well-being of the boxer, for the well-being of the opponent, for the well-being of the event, for everybody's well-being. It just seems logical that they should be tested for COVID-19 before they're able to fight again. However, this leads to the question, okay, and we all know maybe it'll be more accessible in a couple months once it's more available to everybody in the world. I know here in Mexico they've already had some free testing in the cities. However, from what I've heard, that hasn't happened in the U.S. yet, and a lot of the important fights are set to be taken in the U.S. So in that case, would the promoter have to pay? Would the manager have to pay? Would the boxer have to pay? Would the venue have to pay? Would the state have to pay with the license? I'm not sure who would have to pay for it, and if they do have to pay for it, what the cost is going to be. Also, is it going to be a different cost if you're fighting in the U.S., in Mexico, in Europe, in the Middle East, as we've seen a lot of new events and promoters going over there. So it's going to be interesting because everybody seems to agree that it's important that everybody gets tested before they start fighting again. However, as always, who's going to pay for it? There's one thing to be well-intentioned and the other to see, well, who's going to cover these costs? Because a lot of these fighters, okay, maybe in a world championship, you're going to be getting paid thousands or maybe even millions, but if you're fighting 4 rounds here in Mexico, for example, you're getting paid 4,000 pesos, equivalent to $200. How much is the COVID-19 testing going to cost? And is it worth, you being able to fight? Or what if they say, okay, if you fight next year, then you won't have to be tested? Maybe a lot of boxers will be taking that second option, just kind of wait it out because the financial, obviously we haven't fought, in various months. A lot of people who were ready to fight in these months and then couldn't get the fight, we're just on call until it happens again. So, well, in regards to this, Carl, so one of our dear friends over there in Canada, Decada Promotions, they recently canceled their event that was set for May 23rd. They were actually very optimistic when this all started. And in Canada, they canceled the events before the US and before Mexico. So I think they've been taking good preemptive measures. However, recently, last week, in Calgary, Canada, they've extended their no event policy until the end of June. So, well, we're going to see if the rest of the countries are going to follow suit. As we know, boxing has become so internationalized that, when are the flights going to be readily available as far as internationally? Are there going to be certain countries that are banned? Again, the testing, all of this is very important. So we're not sure, and we're all on standby. Also recently, Carl Frampton discussed how he thinks it will take months or even years for boxing to fully recover after all of this. Some of his points were that, okay, so as we were talking, he's a world champion. He has sponsors. Every time he fights, he gets paid well. But what about the 4, 6, 8 rounders, even 10 rounders, even people, boxers who have fought for a world champion, but it was a one-time thing, or they're fighting 10 rounds, but they're making $10,000 for each. How long is that going to hold you out? That's not going to hold you out 6 months or a year. And so he thinks maybe a lot of boxers are going to opt out. They're going to look for another way to make a living while this is all over. So let's say, okay, end of June, they say, okay, events are back on. How many boxers can have that luxury of having been able to be training this whole time instead of working, instead of making ends meet in another manner? So, okay, so it's over in the June 30th. You can fight. And a promoter wants to put in an event, 4th of July weekend. Who's going to be ready? And how much is it going to cost? And, are the people going to want to be going? All of that is really up in the air, and it's really interesting. So he says that he applauds Bob Arum for making a public announcement that once this is all over and in the upcoming events, he's going to lower the prices in order to adjust to the economy of all the boxing fans. Because obviously, once this is all, a lot of people unfortunately have lost their jobs or have had their salaries, cut in half, or have been laid off momentarily until it all begins. So he's saying, okay, that's the other thing. The public, are they going to want to spend, $40, $50, $100 on a boxing event? Or are they going to want that money to, eat, to have their kids go back to school? All of that he thinks is obviously more important. So he said, let's make this economic. Let's all come back together. Let's give, the people that have been wanting sports, that have been, in the house for so long, $20. Make it super accessible. And he's really applauding that. And he says that he hopes that other promoters are going to follow suit, especially, he says, in Europe, where the tickets are pretty pricey. So he hopes that everybody sort of comes together in order to lift boxing up altogether. That he says is obviously going to be, it's going to take some time. And well, as far as his fight against Jamel Herring, originally taking place mid-June, obviously that got canceled / postponed. He says he remains hopeful that it will happen before the end of the year. But even so, as we mentioned, even if they say, okay, at the end of June, let's go, he needs 10 weeks notice. Even if he says he's been training, or he's staying active, or he's staying, more or less on weight, he's taking care of himself, he still needs, for a championship fight, 10 weeks for sparring, to bring in other people, to bring in his coach, to be working with people that obviously, if you're in confinement, as you should be, you're not really coming into contact with them. So it's really interesting. And I say we because I was really optimistic that this would all kind of be over sooner than later. Here in Mexico, they've extended the no event policy until the 31st of May. There were some promoters in Tijuana that were looking at a May 16th date, that had a May 30th date, but now that it's officially postponed until May 31st, we'll see if it happens in June. And also, as we know, in Tijuana, there's a lot of U.S. boxers that come in to the shows. There's a lot of transit in between the two countries, Mexico and the U.S. So also we'll see, because right now you're not really allowed to be coming in and out of the country unless you're working, etc., etc. We'll see that it's affected the whole world, obviously, that it's affecting boxing 100%. I know a lot of boxers have been doing a lot of these challenges, trying to, stay fit. A lot of boxers are giving classes online, whether it's free or whether it's at the cost, showing the routines. Katie Taylor posted one not too long ago where she's kind of doing a boxing hit workout over there. I know Jessica McCaskill over there in Chicago, she's staying busy. She actually is coming out with a mini-series called Staying Ready, which describes, no days off, that she's constantly in the gym, that right now she's in the gym with Rick Ramos. Thankfully, they have a gym available where it's just, just her and a small group of people that they're able to gather, and she's able to keep going, so that when the fight does come up against Cecilia braekhus, she's ready. So I know a lot of boxers are doing this. Another fun challenge that's coming out there, especially with the women, but now it's coming in with the boxing, with the men as well. they show boxing, and then, you know, second take, and they're all done up, showing that, you know, just because you're a boxer doesn't mean that you're, you know, sweaty all the time or in sweatpants all the time. I mean, in my kids, it's most of the time, but we do also get ready once in a while. We do like to wear makeup and heels and dress up. Right now in my shows, I'm happy because I get a chance to dress up, even though I'm not going anywhere. But here we are. I think we're all trying to stay very hopeful. And even though it is stressful, and even though it is, I don't know how to call it. At first, I was very disappointed. Now I feel like the most important thing is to stay healthy, especially if you're surrounded by people, loved ones that are vulnerable. This is not a joke. I mean, to people who are saying, well, I don't know anybody, unfortunately, I have direct family members who have been affected by this. So it is real. Please stay safe. Please stay inside. And if you have to go outside, take your precautions. This isn't, you know, something made up. So just stay healthy, stay sane, and, you know, we're here to support each other. So thank you so much. As always, thank you to everyone in Tijuana, Mexico City, Chicago, Canada, Argentina, and the rest of the world, where they're always here watching our show. So thank you so much. I am Alejandra La Fénix Ayala, and we'll see you Friday, this time in Spanish. Bye-bye.